begin.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's Administration and Finance Committee meeting for Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. Thank you to everyone who's joining us virtually and for the members of the public who are viewing this on our board's YouTube channel. Tonight we have absent Trustee Xavier. He sends his regrets. Trustee Mario Pascucci is expected to be joining us shortly, and our recorder will let me know when he does. Just a reminder, if everyone can please keep their electronic devices on mute. So as has been our practice throughout the agenda, I'll be asking for those opposed rather than all those in favor. And you're welcome to submit your questions to me via the online chat feature, or if you wish to raise your hand as well. I'll generate a speakers list throughout the evening, but if I miss you, please do let me know. As per our briefing on Robert's Rules of Orders this evening, there have been some updates on our process for receipt of minutes and reports and presentations going forward. So let me know if you have any questions as we proceed. Also this evening, we have a special board meeting that has been called by our chair of the board, Trustee Del Rosario. So we will be recessing Administration and Finance Committee once we approve our agenda, and then we'll resume our open session following that item. So item A2, we begin tonight's agenda with our opening prayer found on page 3 of your agenda. Please feel free to say the prayer to yourself while your device is on mute. Beginning with the sign of our faith in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Bless us as we gather today for this meeting. Guide our minds and hearts so that we will work for the good of our community and help all your people. Teach us to be generous in our outlook, courageous in the face of difficulty, and wise in our decisions. Father, we praise you forever and ever. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Item A3 is our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge our First Nations. This electronic meeting via teleconference is taking place on the sacred territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and we thank them for being stewards of this land. Item A4 is approval of the agenda. So there is no taupe sheet for this meeting this evening. However, prior to the approval, I just want to note there is, for item A6A, there is no business arising from the minutes. Are there any other revisions to tonight's agenda prior to approval? So hearing none, I need a motion to approve tonight's agenda as amended. Moved by, is there a trustee that would like to move tonight's agenda approval?
I'll move, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Stefano Pascucci.
I'll
Any
second.
opposed?
Oh, you don't need a seconder.
No, I don't need a seconder, but thank you, Trustee Mario Pascucci, and welcome to the meeting. I'll have Cindy, our recorder, note your time as well in the minutes. Any opposed? Hearing none, carried. So item A4A, there's no calendar items. Item A5 is declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest this evening for the Administration and Finance Committee meeting? Hearing none, there are no declarations of interest. Item A6 on page 4 is approval of the minutes from the Administration and Finance Committee from November 8th, 2022. We do not have any business arising from the minutes. So the minutes are there before you. Are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I have one question. Through you to the director. Madam Director, could you check on something like this in terms of when we do have, if we have, oh, forget it. I think I just answered my own question. Sorry, Madam Chair. Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you, Trustee Pascucci. Are there any questions or comments on these minutes in the November 8th, 2022? No corrections. Okay, not hearing any. So I just need a motion for approval for the Administration and Finance Committee meeting minutes of November 8th, 2022. Thank you. Moved by Trustee Daryl D'Souza. Any opposed? Hearing none. Carried. Okay, so as per your agenda item A7, so we now will recess the Administration and Finance Committee meeting. We will transition into open session special board meeting, which will be beginning at 7:15. But first, can I please have a motion to recess this meeting?
So moved.
I
Madam
move,
Chair.
Thomas.
Thank you. Moved by Trustee Mario Pascucci. Thank you. Any opposed? Hearing none, carried. Associate Director Daniel Del Bianco.
Thank you. To the chair, as noted, the special board meeting is scheduled to start at 7:15. And for those that may have been waiting online for us to begin at 7:15, I just ask that everyone mute and shut your cameras off for the next few minutes, and then we'll reconvene the special board meeting at 7:15.
Perfect. Thank you.
Madam Director, are we good to proceed?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the special Board of Trustees meeting of the Dufferin-Peel Catholic District School Board. The agenda has been posted in our website, and we welcome the members of the public who are joining us via YouTube as well. So let's call the meeting to order. Attendance, we have all trustees present with the exception of Trustee Sean Xavier, who sent his regrets. Please join me in our opening prayer. Kindly mute your microphone and join me in your prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. O Almighty God, our Father in heaven, from whom all goodness and truth on earth have come forth, grant to us, the Catholic community gathered at this meeting, the vision to recognize and the vigor to espouse sound principles of educational theory and practice in a spirit of balanced judgment and the proper perspective. Give us also the courage to turn always onto the path of higher goodness in our deliberations, administrative decisions, and courses of action. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Our land acknowledgement. Again, we would like to acknowledge that we are on sacred indigenous territory and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for being the stewards of this land. Our next item in the agenda is the approval of the agenda. As you may recall, you receive a top sheet to add an item, which is the election of trustee to represent Dufferin-Peel on newly created OXTA committee called Large Urban Catholic School Board Advisory Committee. We do need your approval to add this to the agenda. Could I please have your motion to approve to add this item in the agenda?
I'll move, Thomas.
Moved by Trustee Darrell D'Souza, seconded by Trustee Bria Corbett. I saw Bria Corbett, sad too. So seconded by Trustee Bria Corbett. All in favor? Now I need you to raise your hands now. All in favor? So I can see you all. So it's unanimous, right?
Through the chair, maybe ask for opposed. That would confirm whether it's unanimous or not.
Okay, any opposed? I don't see any hands. Okay, it is unanimous. Thank you. In this regard, we will add this item under H1. Okay. Next item is we do not have approval of calendar items. The next item is declaration of interest. We do have a declaration of interest under M5A in camera item. Anybody who wants to declare their interest? Trustee Anika? Yep, you're on mute.
I have members of family in 2026 and OECTA.
Thank you. Trustee Mary Pascucci?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Likewise, I have an interest in that matter, and because I have a member of a family who belongs to ECTA. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Stefano Pascucci?
Madam Chair, thank you. Same agenda item. The family member was part of OECTA.
Thank you. Are there anybody else that has a declared interest? Seeing none. Do I need to have receipt on this one, Madam Director?
Through the chair, no.
Okay, thank you. We do not have any minutes for this meeting. And from item B to G, we do not have any items. So we are moving to item H, Trustee Committee Administration Reports Requiring Action. This is the H1, the election of trustee to represent Dufferin-Peel Catholic District School Board on newly created OXTA committee called Large/Urban Catholic School Boards Advisory Council. Is there anyone interested in sitting in this committee?
Madam Chair, I am. It's Mario.
Thank you. Trustee Mary Pascucci, is there anyone else interested? Is there anyone interested to join this, to represent us in this committee?
When are the meetings, Madam Chair?
The meetings is only in Zoom. It is a minimum of twice per school year. So the advisory council shall meet virtually a minimum of twice per school year.
Does it say when?
No, not yet. I think once the representatives have been identified, then they will decide on when the meeting will be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I called it twice already, right? Is there anybody else interested in representing Dufferin Peel to the Large Urban Advisory Committee? No? Seeing none, so our representative is Trustee Mario Pascucci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everybody.
Congratulations, Mario.
Thank you, my friends.
Thank you.
Well,
We will send your name to Oxta tomorrow.
Thank
We
you.
are a little late in submitting this, actually.
Or
so-
they're a little early wanting it.
No. They did send it to us, and it was actually in my reports before. So
Thank you,
moving
Chair.
along, we do not have notices of motion, no additional business. Are there any questions asked of and by Board of Trustees? It has to be only specific to this special board meeting. Seeing none, we are now going to in-camera session. Could I please have a motion to move to in-camera?
I move, Thomas.
Moved by Trustee Thomas. Could I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Trustee Stefano Pascucci. Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. So we're moving on to in-camera session.
So through the chair, you'll all receive an invite to the in-camera breakout room.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back to the open session. Trustee Thomas, please do your report.
On the report, only one item we will discuss for the contract negotiation committee meeting January 17, 2023. That is the only one item discussed in camera. So.
Thank you. Thank you. We don't need to move receipt, right, Madam Director?
No.
No. Okay. So before we move to adjourn, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Mike Damad. Mike, could you open your camera? Here's Mike Damad. He is our new Chief Information Officer. Mike comes to us from the Ontario Public Service, and we look forward to working with you for a long time. Take care.
Thank you.
So now
much.
Daniel is now free from our giving him a hard time for all the technical issues that he had given us.
Yeah.
So welcome, Mike.
Take the job.
Welcome, Mike, to our board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so could I get somebody to move for adjournment of the special board meeting?
So move, Madam Chair, Mario.
Moved by Trustee Mari Pascucci, seconded by Trustee Bruno Aenica. Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. So we're moving back to Admin and Finance Committee meeting.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair Del Rosario. Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to Mike as well. So we've returned to our Administration and Finance Committee meeting for January 17th, 2023. So we'll resume our agenda where we left off, which was item B. So item B is the proposed terms of reference for the committee found on page 11. Are there any questions? So hearing no questions, there's one action item on page 11 that the Administration and Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Trustees that the Administration and Finance Committee proposed terms of reference 2023 be approved and adopted. Moved by
So Thomas.
Trustee Thomas. Thank you. Any opposed? Hearing none, carried. So there are no pastors' remarks this evening. There's no awards and presentations, and there's no delegations this evening. So we now move on to item F in the agenda, updates, information reports from trustees for receipt. Item F1A is regular reports, the Ontario Catholic School Trustee Association. Trustee Del Rosario, do we have an OXTA report this evening? You're on mute.
Not this evening, Madam.
Not this evening. Okay, thank you. Moving on, item F1B, good news items. Are there any good news items? So hearing none. Item G, there's no update information or reports from committees for receipt. So item H is updates, information, reports from administration for receipt. So we move on to item H1, October 31st, 2022, the enrollment report, which starts on page 13 of your agenda. And I invite Superintendent Matthew Thomas to present the report.
Thank you very much. Good evening and Happy New Year to all. Through the chair, I'm actually going to invite Manager of Planning, Stephanie Cox, to present the October 31st, 2022 enrollment report. And as previously noted, it begins on page 13 of tonight's agenda package.
Evening, everybody. Through the chair, the report that you see before you, starting on page 13 of the agenda, is the annual information report outlining the board's enrollment as of the October 31st Ministry of Education reporting date for the 2022-2023 school year. As noted in the report, the Dufferin-Peel Catholic District School Board reported a total of 72,425 students, 42,546 of those being elementary, and 29,879 being secondary students. This is a decrease of 1,080 students. Elementary students, pardon me, and a decrease of 274 secondary students from October 29th, 2021. The enrollment report attached as Appendix 1, starting on page 14 of the agenda, does break down enrollments by school and by grade at both the elementary and secondary panels, as well as by family of schools. The difference in enrollment for each school between October 31st, 2021 and October 29th, 2021 and October 31st, 2022 is also identified in the last column on that page. Enrollments at each school indicate the number of in-person learners, which are identified as IP, as well as remote learners identified as R. As of October 31st, there were 337 remote elementary learners and 149 remote secondary learners. That concludes my very brief presentation of the report, and I'm happy to take any questions trustees may have on this item.
Thank you, Manager Cox, and of course, Superintendent Thomas. Are there any questions on item H1, the October
Yes, Madam Chair.
31st enrollment
Maria?
report? Thank you, Trustee Mario Pascucci. Are there any other questions I can add to the speaker list? Hearing none, go ahead, Trustee Pascucci.
Yeah, thank you. Stephanie, thank you for that. Do we have any indication why there was a decline? I mean, we can offer our suggestions, but is there anything that's sort of formalized by the ministry or by our coterminous board saying this is what's happening with decline or increases? And basically just want to find out how we're doing compared to the other people, other organizations.
Through the chair, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record because it's the same type of information that we provide every year to trustees, but we are seeing more students leaving the system than we are seeing coming in. So our kindergarten enrollment continues to be on the lower end, and the higher cohorts are leaving the system, which is one of the causes for the decline. I know that in the past couple of years, we have seen greater declines, and we know that, well, we speculate that was attributed to the COVID pandemic and families leaving the GTA. But right now, we're just looking at our, retention rates. So I don't have a concrete answer as to why they're leaving. It's there's just not as many kids coming into the system. And when we do talk to our coterminous board and other boards in the GTA, it's the same story with these boards as well.
Is it because of maybe age, when people are coming from different parts of the world, et cetera, they're old and they have older children, and that's the reason? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here at this point.
Through the chair, that could be part of it. Another part of it is, the different demographics that are moving into the growing areas of Brampton. A lot of our students are aging out. We're not, and as I indicated, we're not getting that kindergarten registration that we have in the past.
Okay. Relative, and you may not have the specific information to it. You do have in the report regarding St. Sophia and what's transpired since a year ago with considering February was when there was an issue in Ukraine. Like basically what's happened since February to now. Do you have information on this?
Through the chair, we actually do have some information. So as trustees are aware, we did pause enrollment at St. Sophia, but we did find that students that were coming from the Ukraine, they actually did enroll at a number of our schools in the Mississauga East community. If you will actually note in the enrollment report that Mississauga East was one of the only growth family of schools, and we can attribute the majority of that to the war in Ukraine.
Okay, great. Matthew, through you, Madam Chair. Matthew, I'm going to ask you a question later regarding the registration process for St. Sophia. I just want to mention that.
Sure.
Okay. I'll wait till the Q&A piece. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Trustee Mario Pascucci. I also have Trustee Stefano Pascucci with the question.
Trustee Bruno Anika, Madam Chair, had his hand up first.
Oh,
Doesn't matter.
excellent.
Doesn't matter. Go ahead.
No, Bruno, please go ahead. You had your hand up first.
Trustee Bruno Anika, absolutely, go ahead.
Madam Chair, through you to Stephanie, is the percentage that we're seeing at JK decline in enrollment the same as what's going on in other boards, or is it just all grades, but predominantly for us, it's JK versus what's happening in other boards? Ironically, I was asked this question last night and one night last week at 3 council meetings, 2 of them actually, because I talked about the declining enrollment and the impact that it has on grants and the amount of funds that the board gets. And it balances out with, well, kind of sort of balances out with teachers, but not really. But in reference to our JK numbers, do they represent predominantly the same percentage rates? That's what's going on in other boards?
Through the chair, we don't have that level of detail. Not all boards share the information with us. I mean, we can collect the data that we have, and we can do an analysis for trustees and share that with you. I don't know, through another avenue or another date, if that's the wish of the trustees.
Have staff had any conversation with the boards significantly further north of us with their enrollment? Have they seen an increase? Remote areas where cottages are? Is that where? Because I know some of the people of the area that I represent of this board, they sold their houses here in Mississauga and moved to the cottage up north, and that's where their children go to school now. Some regret it, some not so much, but you know, or have you found that? Because they say that there's not enough space for their kids where they are.
Through the chair, in having just general discussions with our, with boards, particularly the Simcoe boards, the boards to the west of us, London, like I said, to the west, and then even further to the east. Just in passing, we do often hear that there is a lot of growth in those boards. I don't have specific information, but I mean, we talk to our counterparts at these boards through our OASBO meetings on a monthly basis. And there's a lot of discussion on enrollments. And we often do hear that these, like I said, Simcoe, Muskoka, both the public and the Catholic boards, there's a lot of growth there out in London, and then even further east.
Yeah, and if I may, Madam Chair, in the past conversations that we used to have, we were not in depth, but in general speaking, we were talking about how enrollments in the northern boards were declining so fast that they were doing certain things that we weren't allowing. And now it's the exact opposite due to people moving out, selling here and moving out there to another place or a cottage. So, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Trustee Ionica. I now have Trustee Stefano Pascucci next.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, to Stephanie. The numbers that are being shown there for high schools for remotes, do those include the students that have opted for remote this year? And like specifically, St. Paul's, for example, you're looking at, from 44 to 105, but then you have these random differences of like 497 as a total, I guess last year, and then minus 348 as of October 2021. So like, does this show any that there, or is that data not taken by school?
So through the chair, so if we're looking at St. Paul specifically, so that does include the remote students. It includes the in-person IB, the remote, the in-person the remote, as well as the remote IB.
Yeah.
And actually, we don't have any of those. Sorry, I'm just looking at the last line there.
How many students do we have online?
Total?
In remote learning right now?
Through the chair, we have, I believe it was 200.
Sorry, specifically high school.
Oh, specifically high school.
Yes.
It is, pardon me. Right now, we have 149 remote secondary learners.
Okay, and those students would be captured by their home school or under St. Paul's?
Through the chair, they should be captured through their home school.
Okay, thank you. I was just trying to figure out how the numbers were making sense. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Pascucci. Are there any other questions?
If I could, Madam Chair, on Stefano's
Absolutely.
question, the students are captured at their home school, but the teachers are housed at St. Paul, correct?
If I
I clarify?
Those students that are in remote this year at St. Paul would have been transferred from their home school to
Yeah.
St. Paul.
Yeah.
They belong to St. Paul.
Yeah, so through the chair, if I can just provide some clarification, because this issue came up last year when we were providing the same report, because what happens is while the students get transferred, they ultimately come back to their remote, their school that they were originally associated with. So the numbers never really made sense. One way or another, the numbers are a bit off, because if you ask a principal at a school, they'll say, here's my registration with the elementary school specifically, that I do have 500 students, but our same summary last year would show 480 because those kids were removed and put at another school. So to make it, they're associated with a school, but in this particular case, they're being taught out of St. Paul. But where they would typically go to school and whose boundary and registration they would have traditionally fallen in is where they're captured on this report. But in this particular case, they are all at St. Paul for secondary.
And captured under the St. Paul numbers?
Not in this report, right, Steph?
Through the chair, that's correct. It's not on this report. No.
Okay, so the St. Paul, if I could, Madam Chair, the St. Paul numbers are strictly St. Paul students. I mean, if that you're not sure, I'd be happy to hear it or read it in news and issues and events. That works for me. Just for clarification.
Through the chair. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, I'm incorrect. I was reading the wrong line. The remote is identified. If on page 23, if you look at page 23 under St. Paul, I didn't see that the 149 are actually identified under St. Paul. Under remote.
Page 23?
23 of the agenda. The agenda that I had.
Thank you.
But if I may also add through the chair, it was a little bit different in elementary. So the elementary remote kids are actually associated with their school. Except for the IEP, students that are part of the IEP, that have an IEP, pardon me, are associated with the remote schools. Which was confusing. That was my error.
What's a RIB? St. Paul SS RIB.
Through the chair, that's the IB program.
It's probably regional, sorry for interrupting, regional international baccalaureate program.
Well, just above that, if I could, Madam Chair, it says IPIB. In person, IB.
Through the chair, that's correct. And then the
Okay.
R is remote IB, but there aren't any.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Trustee Ainika. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, so we'll now move on to item H2, the Stop Our Governance Committee minutes for September 23rd, 2022, which starts on page 32 of your agenda. And Superintendent Matthew Thomas is available if there's any questions. There's no presentation. So are there any questions for item H2? I see Trustee Stefano Pascucci. I think that's it so far. Go ahead, Trustee Pascucci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not to the minutes, but more of a question of how things operate. Do the stopper utilize school parking lots and frontage, so like the kiss and rides and so on and so forth, to turn their buses around?
Through the chair, I would say that in most cases, our schools have bus drop-off lanes where the school buses would come onto the school property using the designated drop-off area on that lane, and then sort of enter the property that way and exit the property just at the end of the laneway. If a school property doesn't have a dedicated bus drop-off area, they would usually enter through the parking lot at some point in some designated area, and turn around at the other end of the property. So it would depend entirely on the specifics of each school's property and the configuration. But in terms of a turnaround, through the chair, if you're referring to just a turnaround for the sake of accessing, going back in a different direction, as opposed to actually dropping off students, I'm not aware of.
Particularly, well, we can take this offline and I can give the exact details, but I've seen it a number of times where a school bus would utilize the front kiss and ride in the morning to turn themselves around to pick up students on the opposite side of the street. So they would come through to a four-way or 3 or 4-way stop, not be able to hit the students or capture the students going southbound, for example, because they'd be turning left to go north, and then would use the school frontage to get around and then pick them up. That's where the question was.
So through the chair, yeah, I'd have to.
Is this common, or is this just because the school buses see it as an easier way to go around?
Well, through the chair, I think I would have to better understand exactly how the route is set up.
Okay.
In terms of where the bus stops are located, what the sort of how the direction of the route is configured in order to be able to better answer that question. So I'd be happy to follow up with you on that one.
Yeah, I'll send you an email later on. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Trustee Pascucci. Next, I have Trustee Bruno Ainica.
Madam Chair, for the first riders, I've always been a huge advocate of the first riders. Ever since, in fact, I remember going almost every year. Ever since hearing a young student got run over by a bus in Ottawa, and it's always been a kind of sort of passion. And I talk about it all the time, but the numbers that staff provided, 2,400 people attended 9 locations, 900 students, 1,500 parents. Is that for all 4 boards, all 2 boards?
Through the chair, that's correct.
How many approximately, your best guess? I know you're not going to come in within 100 students, but how many would staff guess we have in JKSK, specifically JK, that come into our system in September, that take a bus, even don't take a bus? Forget, just in general, your best guess for both boards.
For both boards, through the chair, for both boards, I'd be speculating when it comes to giving you a number. I'd be entirely speculating, so I wouldn't want to necessarily do that. I can certainly take that back and try to get you that number in terms of a total for both boards across JK and SK.
No, I mean, Superintendent Thomas, I could just as easily go through the last report and add it up myself. I was just wondering if you had a general number, because I would say to you that if that's the case, and we between both boards, let's assume it's 400, we're hitting less than 25% of the kids for something that's extremely important. Now, I understand, and this is a responsibility, I think, of 11 trustees and staff in general. I mean, our principal staff, to advocate it and advertise it at every journey into learning that we have. because I feel that at one point or another, all students will ride a bus somewhere. And you know, yeah, there's a lot of kids that do ride a bus to get to school. But the safety of it is extremely important. And I think that, you know, in my opinion, we're not getting the message out to parents, even though I know and I see the emails that do come and are sent. I think that maybe, you know, I know that I'll continue to advertise it at Journey into Learning to say, if your children, even if they don't take the opportunity or don't ride a bus to school, they should know the safety of what goes on and how it goes on a school bus. And so, for, you know, again, I would respectfully and you know, half joking, but in actual sense, I'd be pretty serious. I am serious in saying to my other colleagues that maybe that's something that we can do at every Journey into Learning that we have, because these kids haven't crossed our doorway as yet, but they have this great opportunity to ride a bus. And I remember doing the ride, and I saw some of the kids come off that bus or on that bus with their parents with smiles ear to ear. And so, you know, I think that that's something that maybe, you know, my colleagues would agree that we each kind of spread the word to say, hey, you have this wonderful opportunity, take it. It's a Saturday morning, you know, it's a learning experience and a joyful one. You know, at one point, I'll give my age away, they had something like Elmer the Safety Elephant, which for those of us that are of age, we kind of know how old Elmer is. But you know, that was years ago. And so I mean, I'm happy that 900 kids went. I'd be happier if it was a lot more. But again, I would relay that message to my colleagues to say, you know, maybe we as a team should start to advertise it to say how important it is and the joy and the fun and the education that your child or a child would get out of it.
Through the chair, and if I may just add to that comment, just to note that beyond the in-person session that occurred last August, there are also videos that are available that are being shown at our schools that promote school bus safety from a ridership perspective, and they are being made available across our entire Dufferin Peel system to our students. So even if families and students miss the in-person training, and of course they would miss the opportunity to actually see a bus and be on a bus, but still there would be opportunities for them to partake of these safety training videos. And there are also activity booklets that have been distributed by the third party, that company that the Ministry of Education has designated to offer this service to our board.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Superintendent Thomas.
Thank you, Trustee Bruno Iannica. I would agree that school bus safety is definitely an important life skill. Are there any other questions? So hearing no other questions, so we'll move on to item H3, which is the St. Anne Catholic Elementary School, the host accommodation strategy for the fall 2023, which starts on page 36. I invite Superintendent Matthew Thomas to present the report.
Thank you. And through the chair, just before I invite Manager of Planning Stephanie Cox to walk trustees through the report, I just wanted to note that this is generally a very good news item for Dufferin Peel, in the sense that Dufferin Peel was able to successfully obtain ministry funding approval for a one-to-one replacement school for St. Anne. And just to give trustees a bit of context, since the Capital Priorities Program began in 2010, the Ministry of Education has tended not to fund one-to-one replacement school projects when they've been submitted by school boards. Generally speaking, it's taken very, very exceptional circumstances for that to happen when a school board makes a request to have the ministry replace an existing building with a brand new building. Usually what the ministry would consider would be options for consolidation, where perhaps 2 or 3 schools could be combined into one. And in that case, the ministry would consider a brand new school. So I just wanted to highlight that, provide a bit of context, which is very good news for Dufferin Peel. And with that, I'm going to invite Manager Cox to present the report.
Thank you again. And through the chair, as Superintendent Thomas indicated, the following report provides trustees with information regarding the hosting arrangements for St. Anne Catholic Elementary students while the school undergoes demolition and reconstruction of a new building. In the spring of 2022, the Ministry of Education announced capital priorities funding for the reconstruction of St. Anne Catholic Elementary School in the city of Brampton. St. Anne is currently a 435 pupil place elementary school, which also has an 8-room Porta-Pack attached. The existing school in Porta-Pack will be demolished to make way for a new 504 pupil place elementary school. The existing school site will also be reconfigured to accommodate an on-site school bus drop-off and pickup lane, as well as an on-site kiss and ride, where currently neither of those exists today. To facilitate the demolition and construction of a new school building, students and staff will need to be temporarily relocated to a host location for the duration of the construction. Planning staff, the Family of Schools superintendent, and the St. Anne principal have worked collaboratively to determine and assess various host options to best suit the needs for the St. Anne students. St. Anne has an enrollment, as I indicated, of 486 students, of which 343 attend the regular track program, and the remaining 143 attend the extended French program. The main considerations in assessing potential schools as host locations included available classroom spaces and kindergarten rooms, proximity to the St. Anne community, and the availability and size of the host school bus loop to accommodate the additional buses that will be required to transport St. Anne students for the duration of the hosting. There were 3 hosting scenarios considered. The first option was to host all of St. Anne students, both the remote, the regular track and extended French, in one location, but this would require all students to be transported on a daily basis to a closed elementary school in Mississauga. There was also an option to host all students by grade, which would see students in kindergarten to grade 3 attending one host location, and students in grades 4 to 8 attending the second host location. The third option, which was presented to the St. Anne community on December 7th at a community open house meeting, included hosting regular track students in kindergarten to grade 8 at St. Ursula Catholic Elementary School, and hosting the extended French students at St. Angela Merici Catholic Elementary School. This option was best able to satisfy the main host considerations in terms of keeping students in close proximity to the St. Anne community. There are sufficient classrooms at each of these host locations to accommodate the St. Anne students, and both schools will be able to accommodate the additional buses on their respective sites. There were approximately 100 parents and students in attendance at the community meeting open house, and the plans for the new school and the proposed hosting options were well received. The information presented at the meeting has also been shared with the area trustees representing the St. Anne, St. Ursula, and St. Angela Merici communities. Board staff and the appointed architect for the new St. Anne are currently working through the municipal approvals process, and subject to receiving approval to demolish the existing building and site plan approval for construction of the new St. Anne, it is anticipated that students and staff will be relocated to the respective host schools commencing September 2023. The length of the hosting period will be dependent upon the procurement of materials, supplies, and available trades. Board staff will continue to update the community via community bulletins as information becomes available. This concludes the presentation of the report, and I'm happy to take any questions trustees may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Cox and Superintendent Thomas. I do have Trustee Stefano Pascucci wanting to ask a question, and I see Trustee Bruno Ainika's hand is also raised. Are there any others that I can add to the speaker list? Seeing none, go ahead, Trustee Pascucci.
Thank you. Can we just go to page 53 for a second, if you don't mind? The before and after school programs. So St. Ursula has PLASP, St. Angela Merici has YMCA. Does St. Anne's have one currently?
Through the chair, the St. Anne School does have PLASP as their childcare provider.
Okay.
However, if we were to, once we relocate the students and host the students at these alternate locations, we hope that the provider will go with them because they will operate as separate entities. So St. Anne will operate at St. Angela Merici and at St. Ursula as St. Anne. So
Okay.
at this and in that case, we can actually move the childcare provider with the school.
Okay, yeah, because my next question would be, would YMCA take guarantee PLASP students spaces? But if PLASP is hopefully able to accommodate, or at least the school is able to accommodate a St. Anne PLASP entity, that would make every parent's a lot less crazy, trying to figure out if they can get space or not. So, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Pascucci. Next, I have Trustee Bruno Ainika.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Does staff have projections on enrollment for the next couple of years on this school?
Through the chair, yes, we do have that information.
I apologize. I went through this and I did not see it. So unless I missed it, my apologies.
Through the chair, it's not identified in the actual report, but we're working on our enrollment projections for next year right now.
Okay, because I went through it and I didn't see it, and I thought, well, maybe I missed it, and it could be, but if staff has could provide that information, I'd appreciate it.
Through the chair, we're happy to do that.
Thank you, Trustee Ainika. Did you have any other questions?
Yeah, is this? I think I've been to this school to deliver some stuff, but is this the one where the entrance is I won't say it's tight, but it's an entrance. It's almost like it's at the very back of the bus. It's not forefront in the community of the road. It's not like out front. It's out back with a road in it. Is that the school that I'm thinking of?
Through the chair, you are correct. There's a driveway that leads to the school, which requires buses to actually unload and load students on the street. With the reconstruction of St. Anne, we are actually going to move all of that onto the site.
Okay. Yeah, I remember being in there and I thought, how the heck? I couldn't find it. One. And it was very awkward. I mean, even the front door was awkward. So, but no, I'm glad for this community, and you know, I'm always thrilled when a community. I remember the school, and it's a great thing that we're doing rebuilding that school. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Ainika. Are there any other questions for this item, H3?
Madam Chair, I have a question, please.
Go ahead, Trustee D'Souza.
It's since we're speaking about St. Angela Merici and St. Ursula, are there any plans to move the French program into one school? Because I think it's divided between these two schools right now.
Through the chair, I'm going to defer that question to the Associate Director.
Sure. Through the chair, if I can, I think as part of our long-term facilities master plan, and I think we've had these discussions in the past, just mapping out scenarios. I believe a lot of us all understand that having an FI program all at one building, as opposed to dropping potentially, you know, one of your children off at one school, then racing to another one to drop it off. So we're looking at, especially now with the additional or extra access capacity at our schools, options that may present to us to consolidate FI programs into single buildings. So, but more information will come forward. We'll have those discussions as part of our the development or this year's version of our long-term facilities master plan, but definitely on the radar.
Because I think we've been discussing this for last 4 years now.
We have. Part of it is we just need to make sure that enrollment settles down and we find the proper locations, because what we don't want to do is ever just move everybody to one only to realize that location number two, or, you know, is there a moratorium on schools? Can we do it in light of the province's moratorium on school closures? Because as part of school closures, you can only move so much of a program out of a building at one particular time. So there's a couple of different moving parts that haven't allowed us to march ahead with these over the course of the last couple of years. So when they put a moratorium on school closures and the school closure process, it's also includes moving programs in and out of buildings.
Yeah, but this one specifically, I think you have grades 1, 2, 3 in Ursula and 4, 5, 6 in Merchi. So you have the English program and the French program happening in both the places. And I've received significant number of complaints where parents are finding it difficult and have been finding it difficult for a long time. So you will still have a French program in one school and the English program in the other school.
Absolutely. And through the chair, I think
there is no closure.
No, there isn't a closure, but the ministry doesn't define, or I guess the guidelines aren't only about closures. The moratorium has been put on moving. If you move more than 50% of a program out of a building, you need to run an accommodation review process under the ministry's guidelines. Right. So that's partly. So while we can do the planning in the background, like we've done the last 4 years about where enrollment's going up, where it's going down, where we invest responsibly in buildings, what the FCIs are, we can't really enact a lot of these things at the moment while we still are under this moratorium, because it's not just about the closure of a building, it's about moving any of these large programs from one building to another building.
All right. Thank you, Associate Director. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Trustee D'Souza. My pleasure. And thank you, Associate Director. Are there any other questions for this item H3? So hearing none and seeing none, hopefully I haven't missed anyone. So we move on to item I. So there's no trustee committee administration reports requiring action. There's no notices of motion. Item K, no additional business. So we move on to item L, the questions asked of and by trustees. And I'm happy to start a speaker list. Do trustees have questions? Yeah, so I see Trustee Mario Pascucci. Any others?
Herman?
You see Herman?
I don't hear him, but I had his hand up.
Okay, Trustee Herman Valoria, do you have a question? I don't see him either.
Okay, yes, I do. I was muted.
No problem. Okay, I will add you to the speaker list. Are there any other questions? Okay, how about you start, Trustee Mario Pascucci?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Madam Director first. I have two questions I'd like to ask. The very first one is the idea that I know that we try to approach OXTA. I don't know what happened. We have a motion that we want to move forward in terms of support for tuition or support for additional services for students because of that have suffered because of the pandemic. Marianne, do you know? I know Max was working on the motion too, and I received it, and that looks great. But it was the idea: can we put the motion in on Tuesday or Monday or something like that? How does that fit out right now in terms of two questions here? When can we submit the motion for consideration to the AGM? And what is the ministry doing relative to supporting students?
Chair, I think you're referring to adding an additional OXTA resolution to the ones that the trustees have already put together and passed.
Right, yes.
I believe the due date to OXTA is actually the day of the board meeting. So if you want to bring this resolution forward, you'd probably want to get it on the agenda of the board meeting. I can certainly reach out to OXTA and advise them that there's a possibility that we'll be submitting the day after the due date, if you want that resolution to come forward for consideration.
I know Max has worked on it and he sent it to me. I took a quick look. It looks good. Can you take a look at it, Marianne, and then sort of
through the chair, I have.
Okay.
Again, what I would suggest is requesting it be put on the the upcoming board meeting
yes,
for
I agree.
consideration.
Okay, through you, Madam Chair, to our chair, Trustee Luz, is it okay to put that on your motion, on your agenda?
Sure.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
It'll be a heavy agenda on Wednesday, on Tuesday, but I think we could look at it.
Thank you very, very much.
Okay.
I would like to move forward on it once we get it as quickly as possible. Thank you. The
Oh,
second question.
Through the chair, can I suggest perhaps maybe Trustee Pascucci, you may want to put it on the Faith and Program Agenda Committee meeting first to have it discussed and then recommended to go forward to board?
That's great. Great idea.
Okay.
Can we do that to the chair? Whether I don't know whether the chair is the Faith of Program. So
I'll work with it. I'll work with David in the chair.
Okay, great. Second question, Madam Chair, if I may, regarding registration at St. Sophia and basically what's happened in 1 year. If there's such a quick couple of minutes discussion or whatever, recognizing there's some ebb and flow within the community.
If you through the chair, if you're referring to what we're seeing in terms of enrollment for next year,
yes,
I'm going to turn it over to Associate Director Del Bianco to give you what we know to date in terms of enrollment coming forward.
And frankly, Madam Chair and Madam Director, if the information is still sketchy in the sense of not all there, I mean, we can live with it, and I'll ask the same question again in the end of the month. But I'd like to get a status of it, right, relative to what's happening with the community, the registrations of siblings and things of that nature. So if we can get that answer tonight, great. If not, if I can wait till the board meeting if I have to.
So, through the chair, I can provide part of it this evening, and part of it's probably best to share later this month when registration in the JK closes on the 27th of January.
That's fantastic. Thank you for helping me out on this one. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
As trustees are aware, and we've laid out the plan, we've gone to the community. We've shared with the community that we're going to continue to put a cap on all the grades. So if you are currently enrolled at St. Sophia, the cap doesn't impact you. So the cap was 60 students per grade. So we know that some grades are above 60 from the students that are in there. So that doesn't change. If you're in there and you have 72 students in your classroom, those 72 still get carried forward. But as the numbers go down, we're trying to cap the school at 60 per grade. We're only taking registrations in at JK. And again, there's a cap of 60 at JK. We're monitoring that situation. That enrollment for JK closes at the end of January. So we should have more to share about those numbers, those JK numbers at the end of the month or in the beginning of February. But right now, overall, between this time last year and compared to this time last year, enrollment overall has gone down at St. Sophia, in large part because we saw students come in and then we saw those students leave, whether it's to their local school or they have left and returned to Ukraine. So overall enrollment is down. And students register at the school, they realize where their home school is or where they might be living in the area, and they've transferred over to. So we've seen enrollment, as Manager Cox had pointed out in her enrollment summary report, that a lot of the neighboring schools and that community enrollment goes up as people settle in over there. So overall, it's down. The strategy, as we've shared with the community, as we've broadcast largely to the community, is there's not enough to really make any significant changes, and we'll continue to monitor enrollments over the course of this year. We already have a strategy in for next year, so we'll find out what we're going to do for, I guess it would be, I hate to say it already, but September 2024. But we'll continue to provide updates as we go along. But we'll monitor the enrollments, and we'll report back accordingly to trustees.
Madam Chair, if I may ask one more question as a follow-up to that.
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
Thank you. Daniel, through Madam Chair. Daniel, is the community being kept informed as we motor along on this one? And how are they being informed?
So through the chair, the planning team, myself, the superintendent, yourself, were at that meeting. We were at a school council meeting. We've committed to that school community that will continue to provide regular updates, whether it's through letters to the community bulletins, and occasionally going up to their school council meetings to provide those updates. But I think they've also realized that enrollment, the number of families arriving from Ukraine is not where it was trending this time last June, right? So I think that was one of the clear messages that came out when we were out that school community. They were happy to hear that there'd be a cap in place and that we would continue to monitor enrollment. And in the event that something spiked or the trend started to really accelerate, that we'd start looking at potentially alternative accommodation strategies. But everybody seems to be okay with, let's not rush into anything. Let's monitor. There's not enough to make any long-term sustainable decisions, not enough information yet, and to just watch. And if something changes, then we act accordingly.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you. And at one point, I'd like to look at a scattergram February last year compared to whatever date that next scattergram will happen, but that's not urgent right now. I just want to mention that we're looking for it. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you,
Daniel, for an exceptional report. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Trustee Pascucci. I have Trustee Stefano Pascucci to this point, followed by Trustee Herman Valoria. Go ahead, Trustee Stefano Pascucci.
Thank you very much. To Mario's point regarding, and I guess also Daniel's point regarding enrollment, you mentioned that January 27th is the final date for JK enrollment. When will parents find out if there is a lottery or not, I guess?
So through the chair, we'll take that. We'll as we committed to the community, we'll take enrollments right up through to the 27th. We'll find out what those enrollments are at the end of day, and then we reconvene as a team on early the next week and find out what those numbers are and what the strategy is to inform the community with whatever the plan is.
And then would it typically, if there is a lottery, would it, I guess, would happen in February, March?
I'd hate to go out and say that there is a timeline, but I would imagine that the school community would like to know as soon as possible to make alternative plans. So with that in mind, we'd work around our strategy.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Pascucci. Trustee Herman Valoria is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair, I have a question regarding the situation about French teachers. Is this the proper forum for that? Would this be
through the chair? We can absolutely pose your question. We can do our best, depending on what the nature of the question is. We do have our HR staff here if it's about staffing. But we can pose the question. If we can address it this evening, we will. And if not, we'll take it away and we can address it at a later date.
Okay. Well, my question is that I guess there's a province-wide problem with attracting or retaining or recruiting French teachers. And we have a problem also in our board. So my question would be, what are we doing as a board to retain these French teachers? And also to actively recruit them, because I think we have a shortage of French teachers, both in secondary and elementary. As well, my next question would be to address this shortage of French teachers. Is there a policy where we cannot bring back retired French teachers? Is there a policy that once you're retired, you are retired and you can't come back?
Through the chair, I'll invite Superintendent Strong to respond.
Thank you. Good evening. Through the chair, a few questions were posed and I'll do my best. And if I miss one, please circle me back. There is a province-wide shortage, as the trustee has articulated, with qualified French teachers. The problem is further compounded geographically and with regard to Catholicity as well. In order to attempt to target these individuals and candidates, We do participate in a very targeted recruitment fair that does specialize in Catholic teachers as well as French teachers through the Apply to Education. Apply to Ed is a fully saturated online platform for which all teaching recruitment is filtered through in the province. So they do have application in all 72 boards. They are the single most saturated point of contact for that labor market. Sorry, I have a very old dog as well. My apologies. With regard to our retention issue, this has long been a problem for almost every school board that I've ever worked at, particularly because once hired within a collective agreement itself, once hired to a permanent status, regardless of panel, there's a lot of opportunities for teachers to move about within the range of their qualifications. It's typically not restricted within the collective agreement. So what that means is while we may hire a French teacher and we may hire to teach for them to teach French, very quickly they're asking to teach different subject areas. In order to address this issue, we were able and successfully able to negotiate a provision within the elected collective agreement that indicated if we did hire a new teacher candidate to that panel, that they would give us a commitment of a number of years within French before they would seek to apply out. With regard to your next question, there is no policy with an immediate or block, for lack of a better word, for somebody who retires to move over to our occasional teachers list. We typically are hesitant to hire retirees onto our occasional teacher list because we are a capped board, meaning that we have a limited number of spaces available on our occasional teachers list. And once a teacher has retired and is in receipt of a pension, they have a limited number of days for which they are available to teach. So when somebody who has retired from our board seeks to move over into the occasional teaching group, we do seek specific credentials when we make that assessment. Hopefully that's answered your question.
I was at, through the chair, I was at a few school council meetings, and I heard from the principal and the parents that they are experiencing situations where a teacher, a French teacher, is away because of illness. And there is, especially with French immersion, that the principal then has to make all kinds of decisions as to how to cover that absence. So in one case, the principal moved a core teacher to do the French immersion, and had a supply teacher come in to do the core, which in this case, when you call in a supply teacher, as everyone knows, they're just babysitting them and they're not teaching them because the supply teacher may not be, capable of teaching French. So in a situation where it's a prolonged absence, then the problem becomes more acute. And there have been some instances where they have actually brought in someone who speaks French, is not qualified, and they had to teach actually with a letter of permission. So I believe this is harming our curriculum, because when someone is teaching a grade with a letter of permission, really the students are not getting the proper instruction, and that then when the following year they move to another grade, then there is a gap for these students, and the problem is compounded, as you can imagine. So I believe we have a situation here that needs to be addressed. And I got a call, what happened to be a retired teacher, and she was under the impression that the board doesn't want retired teachers. But in a situation where we are experiencing this kind of situations, I think we should advertise to all French retired teachers that we welcome them back. I don't know. Can you comment on that through the chair?
Certainly. So through the chair, this is not just a problem with Dufferin Peel. The Ministry of Education over the past number of years has also identified that this is a primary concern for a number of school boards. They have started pilot projects to actually recruit French teaching speakers from France. This pilot project, I think, netted 30 individuals who were willing to come to Ontario, and that didn't even contemplate where they wanted to live geographically or whether or not they in fact were Catholic. So the ministry's pilot project did not yield very many results. We do not automatically discount people from the occasional teachers list. Anyone who does want to work, their credentials would be reviewed against the criteria for which we need. On the Apply to Education website, our recruitment staff are looking every single day for individuals have completed packages and French credentials, and they are expedited and brought to the front of the line for recruitment purposes.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Trustee Valoria. Did you have any other questions, or was that?
I have another question, if I may.
Well, how about, I know I do see Trustee Bruno and Anika waiting, but I can come back to you. If I will add you to the list again, if that's okay. Trustee Bruno and Anika, go ahead.
Madam Chair, just to the comment that Superintendent Strong made that there are a number of days that retired teachers can work. Is that similar to the principals, vice principals of 50, or is that more or less?
So through the chair, those rules are in fact set by the pension plan themselves. So any teacher who is retired in receipt of a TPP is subject to the TPP rules. Sometimes they do change it. It has gone higher than 50 in the past, but these are rules that are set by the pension plan.
And some of the challenges and opportunities that I'm hearing at council is that we just can't get supply teachers in our building in some cases. And with the not so much the COVID now, but more with the flu scenario, and some schools have reported as much as 60 kids being off, which means that eventually staff will be off as well, as was reported in December. But hiring them on to the supply list is a damn if you do, a damn if you don't. A damn if you do, in that you're taking up one spot that can only work 50 days. And if you don't have French teachers. And I mean, this has been a challenge and an opportunity for as you indicated, Stephanie, all boards. And we've been hearing about it and all the work that staff has been trying to do to get them in. But some of the challenges that we have is exactly what you had indicated, where teachers come in as a French teacher because they go to the top of the line, get a job, and then a couple of years later they go, this is not for me, and they move on to something else to teach something different, and we find ourselves in the same boat. And if I were an employee, or if I were a supply teacher, I would, or if I was anybody just saying, okay, I'm on the supply. I know people that have been on the LTO list for 7 years. But if you're a French teacher, you could probably be on that LTO list or the supply list maybe 6 months before you get a full-time job. And if it were me, I'd be pretty unhappy with the union because, you bring them to the top of the line. And on the other hand, I could have had that same opportunity and be a French teacher. So, but yeah, it's not just in the schools that Trustee Valoria looks after, but it's in all of our schools because the rest of us hear it as well. And so it is a challenge. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Anika. I do have Trustee Luz Del Rosario to this point, followed by Trustee Herman Valoria. Go ahead, Trustee Del Rosario.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to add that the ministry is well aware of the situation that we have, and they have been working with the pension organization to increase the number of days that we could have retirees in our schools. And unfortunately, up to this time, the ministry is not even able to do that. And they hear the problem about staff and especially French teachers across the board. So it's not right. It's not only isolated to Dufferin-Peel, but it's really across the board in Ontario and even in Canada, the way the minister had said it one time. So I just want to share that every chair's teleconference that we do, that item is always on the list. And unfortunately, the Federation of Teachers is also the one not approving the increase in number of days that the retired teachers and principals can work. Some of them have even looked at, retired teachers and principal even looked at their own situation, if there was an opportunity that they could at least do something. But in the end, they look at their own pension because it will jeopardize their own pension and benefits. So I think I just want to share that the board, our board, has been trying our very best to really recruit for French teachers for at least 4 years that we've been doing this, that we've been hearing this. It's been going on for a while. So I just want to share that, and every teleconferences that we have is on the item that the minister reports to us, the status of their progress. So I just want to share that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you so much, Trustee Del Rosario. Next, I have Trustee Herman Valoria. And are there any other questions? Okay, go ahead, Trustee Valoria.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the chair, to Superintendent Strong. I want to congratulate your department for hiring an itinerant trainer for secretaries. I happened to be in a school where she was present and training a new secretary at that school. I believe that that was very well received, and that we actually need more now. How was that funded? Was there a special funding for that, or is that going to be a permanent program that you have?
So through the chair, that position was a newly created position that originates out of the Finance Services Department when Keeping Local 2026. And we were able to create and build that position as a result of system investment funding. Now, the system investment funding has been what we would consider to be precarious funding. However, year after year, they seem to be renewing it for us.
Yeah, because when I was in the position of principal, I found out that a lot of the secretaries who, whenever someone is absent, especially for also a prolonged leave, I had, for example, in my experience, I had a succession of secretaries who came in as the acting head secretary in my case, and I found out that they actually weren't trained for anything. And in my case, actually, I had a head secretary who was away for 2 years. And for 2 years, I actually was doing the school-generated funds, taking care of that. Because every time with the temporary secretaries, as soon as the position becomes available for them to apply, then they apply to that, and then I get another new temporary secretary. So probably, is there a reason why secretaries are not, who are in the pool, are not trained for at least the basic needs in the schools, like for attendance, for in this case for budget, or for school generated funds, or even for attendance?
So through the chair, I can say that we are now including a whole litany of training for our CASIP staff. CASIP is a relatively newly created occupational group under QP 2026. When I first started here in the supervisory officer chair, there wasn't a casual pool of secretarial staff to replace those who are absent. The board at that time was relying on temp agencies to backfill. And I'm sure that your experience was likely with one of those individuals. So these people were brought in to assist principals and just really managing the office, but they didn't have any specific duck and field training. But when we moved away from reliance upon the temp help agencies and we started building this CASIP group, which is QP Local 2026 staff who are able to deploy to backfill with these types of vacancies. And we have been partnering within the training and development department under human resources, as well as Julie and Brian with IREN and all of our financial systems. With the newly rollout of Power School, we're also including all of these individuals to ensure that they have the basic understanding of School Messenger and all of the basics that can help them run that office.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Valoria. Are there any other questions?
I have another question.
Go ahead, Trustee Valoria.
Okay, on another note, when the board sends out an RFP for bidding, is the policy always to pick the lowest bid? I don't know who I should direct that to.
So I can take that question for you. With a competitive process through procurement, there's a variety of different options that are used depending on the actual dollar value of the goods being procured. So at a certain level, we have an option to do either requests for proposals, we have limited tenders, or we have pre-qualifications that we can do. When you reach a certain threshold, like over $100,000 in spend, you do strictly tender. And if you issue a tender, the award would go to the lowest bidder regardless. But in other areas where you can do a request for proposal or a request for quotes or pre-qualification, you can include what you call a matrix of qualifications and requirements. And then you would build a matrix on how much each of those areas are worth. So you build a measure to determine who you would award to. In many cases, your price component or your cost component is going to be one of the most major factors that are built into that. But it's not necessarily always the basis for the award.
So taking, for example, if you send it out for tender, I guess you make a distinction between a tender and a bid. So
through the chair, yes, you would be very clear in what our bid document is that's going out into market.
So a tender would be 100,000 and up?
Yeah, so through the chair, the determination would be you spend a minimum of $100,000 on the goods and services you're going out to market for, and then you would issue it as a tender to say lowest bid is going to get our award.
So would there be no consideration of, let's say that the difference between one, in the situation of a tender, if there were two bids coming in, and the difference between one and the other would be a matter of $500. Would you still go with the one who was less than, you would go for the bid with the lowest one, where the difference is only $500?
So through the chair, I mean, strictly speaking, if you're issuing a tender, then yes, your lowest bid is going to win. Now, there may be extenuating factors where you can ask additional questions and clarification, but generally speaking, on a tender, yes, it would be your lowest bid.
So no consideration would be given to the fact that the one company who has the higher bid is much more experienced than the company that's came in with the lowest bid.
So through the chair, it depends on what you're going to market for. And in some cases, if you know that that kind of information is out there, if you know that there's different ways, you may not issue it as a tender. You may issue it as a request for proposal. So you can factor in other areas to be evaluated in your decision-making process. But, you know, for example, if we're going to go for tender, we know we want a very specific product. Like we want so many laptops that we need, that's going to be a major purchase. So yeah, your lowest bid would win in those cases. Usually your vendors that are submitting bid proposals are very experienced when you get to that large dollar value items that you're looking for. But I mean, you can't mess, because at the end of the day, if a vendor is not going to win the award, they have a right to come back and challenge your award process, especially when it comes down to a tender, which is supposed to be awarded to the lowest dollar bid.
For the sake of for argument, even if it's just a difference of $1.
Well,
it's
for the chair, I don't think we've ever seen that kind of experience happen. So,
okay. So with regard to the bids, you're more at liberty to not take the lowest bid. Is that correct?
through the chair with the tender, you're required to take the lowest bid. That is who would be awarded the tender.
No, okay. Not with tender, but the request for proposal.
With a request for proposal, you have a few other criteria you've built into your matrix that you can also take into consideration. Price would be weighted very highly, but you can take into consideration experience, history of the vendor, qualifications of the vendor. You can build that matrix to include other components, but price would still be heavily weighted.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you very much, Trustee Valoria. I am at the end of my speaker list. Are there any other questions? So I don't see any and I don't hear any. Hopefully I haven't missed anyone. So item M, we do not have any declared interest items. Item N is in camera. So can I please have a motion to move in camera, please? Moved by Trustee Bruno Iannica. Thank you. I see your hand. Any opposed? Hearing none. Carried. Okay, so at this time, maybe we'll take a 10-minute break, reconvene at 9 p.m. just to make sure we've moved into in camera before proceeding, if that's okay. For the members of the public who have joined us this evening, thank you for joining in our teleconference. You will be placed into the waiting room now until our meeting resumes in the open session. So if you're not able to wait until then, we do thank you for joining us this evening, and God bless. So trustees and staff, if we can resume at 9 p.m., that would be great. And Associate Director Del Bianco.
Yeah, and through the chair, just a reminder, you'll all receive an invitation to join the in-camera breakout room. So that'll take us out of the public realm and into our in-camera room. And then we'll reconvene at 9.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Daniel, did everyone make it back?
Through all the trustees are here.
Excellent.
Yep, everyone's back.
And Amrita, are we back to live?
Yep, you're good to go.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. So we'll rise from in-camera and report. Tonight, we approved the in-camera minutes from the Administration and Finance Committee meeting of November 8th, 2022. Can I please have a motion for approval for the rise and report?
Move, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Moved by Trustee Bruno Ionica. Any opposed? Hearing none. Carried. So I just need a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting at 9:05.
I move, Thomas.
Thank you. Trustee Thomas moved. Any opposed? Hearing none. Carried. So once again, thanks to our members of the public for joining us this evening. We appreciate your attendance. Our next Administration and Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for February 7th, 2023. Good night, everyone. God bless.
Thank you. Well done.
Yeah, good night.